I messed up royally, but does he have to be this cruel? The phone call that ended my life came on a Tuesday morning. I was in our sun-drenched kitchen, polishing a silver frame that held a picture of Lorenzo and me on our wedding day. Him, vibrant and laughing. Me looking up at him with what everyone called adoration. The irony is a physical sickness in my stomach now. My father's voice is normally a rich baritone, the kind of voice that can soothe a colicky baby or deliver a eulogy with equal, measured grace. It's the voice of moral authority in our small town. But the voice on the line was a stranger's. It was flat, hard, like a stone skipping across a frozen lake. "Cassandra," he said, and the absence of his usual "my dear girl" was the first crack in the ice. "I've just listened to something Lorenzo sent me. I need you to come to my study. Now." Then a click. The click wasn't just the end of a call, it was the sound of a guillotine blade dropping. My hand, still holding the phone, started to tremble. I had to brace myself against the cool marble of the countertop as my mind scrambled, desperately trying to find an innocent explanation. A letter. An email complaining I'd been short with him. But the denial was a thin, brittle thing. Deep down, I knew. A sick, sour taste, like chalk and deceit, rose in my throat. He hadn't confronted me. He hadn't yelled. He had gone straight to the one pillar my entire identity was built upon. In that sterile silence, I understood that the carefully curated world of Cassandra, the perfect pastor's daughter, the devoted, long-suffering wife, hadn't just been threatened. It was already a pile of smoldering ash. Before you judge me, you have to understand who we were. Or, more accurately, who I thought we were supposed to be forever. Lorenzo and I weren't just a couple. We were a local institution, a testament to God's grace, or so my father often implied from the pulpit. Lorenz was the brilliant, impossibly handsome history teaching assistant at the university. The one whose lectures on the Roman Republic were so captivating that students who weren't even in his class would sneak in to listen. He had this mane of wild, dark curls and a laugh that could disarm armies. I was the pastor's daughter, raised on scripture and societal expectation, groomed from birth to be the perfect, supportive, and elegantly understated wife. Our union was seen as something blessed, a picture-perfect postcard of wholesome, aspirational love. He was my greatest achievement, the living proof that I had fulfilled my destiny, that I was good, that I was worthy of the envy I saw in other women's eyes. Then came the cancer. It arrived unannounced, a vile little thief in the night, diagnosed in a sterile white room that smelled of antiseptic. I remember the word malignant hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. My first, secret, shameful thought wasn't for him. It was for the trip to Tuscany we had just booked. It was a fleeting, ugly flicker of selfishness that I immediately buried under a performance of wifely devotion. But it was there, and it was a seed. The treatment saved his life, but it was a scorched earth campaign. It stole the man I had married. The chemotherapy and radiation were poisons, and they leached the color from our world. His vibrant energy was replaced by a bone-deep weariness that clung to him like a shroud. The sharp, intelligent glint in his eyes dimmed into a permanent, hazy exhaustion. He lost his hair, then his appetite, then his libido. He started to smell sick. It was a faint, cloying scent of medication, chemicals, and something indefinably sad, a smell that clung to our expensive bedsheets, our furniture, the very air in our home. A smell I couldn't scrub away, and it made me feel ashamed. There, I said it. I was deeply, corrosively ashamed of my own husband. My shame was a constant, buzzing thing, a cloud of flies I couldn't swat away, and it was at its worst on Thursdays. Thursday was my book club. It wasn't just any book club, it was the book club. The wives of doctors, lawyers, the town councilmen. Women whose lives were as pristine as their manicured lawns, helmed by a particularly sharp-eyed woman named Beatrice. I was their host. My home was the stage, and I was the star performer of domestic bliss. But my leading man was failing me. Lorenzo, slumped in his favorite armchair in a worn-out cardigan, looking pale and gaunt, became a prop I couldn't hide. He was a glaring, inconvenient symbol of my life's messy imperfection. The sympathetic glances from the other women felt like pity. Beatrice's saccharine inquiries. "Oh, Cassandra, you are just a living saint. the way you care for him, felt like an indictment of my failure to keep up appearances. He wasn't my handsome prize anymore. He was a weight, a social anchor dragging me down into a sea of mortification. And I started to resent him for it. God, did I resent him for making my life so ugly? It started small, as these insidious things always do. The wicked little seed of an idea planted itself in my mind one Wednesday night, the kind of thought you immediately try to swat away, but it buzzes right back. Book club was the next day, and Lorenzo was having a particularly bad week. He looked translucent, almost ghostly, and the thought of Beatrice's condescending pity made my skin crawl. His oncologist had prescribed a dizzying array of pills for nausea, pain, fatigue, and God knows what else. They were all lined up in that depressing blue plastic weekly organizer on the kitchen counter, a twice-daily reminder of our failure. His primary anti-cancer medication was a small, chalky white pill. The potent vitamin C tablets I took every morning, promising immune support, were almost identical. So I did it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a strange, illicit thrill. I waited until he was in the shower, the sound of the water masking the tiny click of the pill box. With my heart thumping a guilty rhythm against my ribs, I swapped one of the white pills for a vitamin C tablet. Just one. It felt both monumental and insignificant at the same time. I rationalized it with a speed that startled me. It was a kindness, really. It wouldn't harm him, not just one pill, one time. It was for his own good to give him a little boost, to help him rally for my friends. It was for us, for the preservation of our image. The next day, he seemed a tiny bit brighter. It was probably a placebo effect, a complete coincidence, but I clung to it like a lifeline. My book club went off without a hitch. Lorenzo sat with us for a whole 20 minutes, and Beatrice even commented, "Oh, Cassandra, he's looking a bit more like his old self. You're a miracle worker." That small, poisonous compliment was all the validation I needed. It was like a drug. What began as a desperate once-a-week measure became a habit, then a system. On days I needed him to be on. A dinner with my parents, a church fundraiser, a Saturday trip to the farmer's market where we'd inevitably run into someone important, I'd perform the little switch. 2 pills, then 3. I became a secret pharmacist, a curator of my husband's energy levels, all tailored to my social calendar. My justifications grew more elaborate. I was the one bearing the real burden here, the emotional labor of his illness. I was the one fielding the awkward questions, managing the sympathetic looks. I deserved a break. I deserved for him not to look like a walking tragedy for just a few hours. And Lorenzo, he never seemed to notice. That was the most infuriating and enabling part. He's always been the quiet, non-confrontational type. He internalizes everything. He'd listen to my thinly veiled complaints. "You look so tired, darling. Are you sure you want to come downstairs? You wouldn't want to make people uncomfortable," with a passive, weary expression that I mistook for apathy. He never argued, never pushed back. His silence wasn't peaceful. It was a vacuum. A space I filled with my own narrative, my own excuses. His communication avoidance, which I once found calming and steady, now felt like a form of stubbornness, a deliberate withdrawal. It was like he was retreating from me, from our life. And in my warped mind, my little deception was a way to pull him back, to force him to participate in the life I still wanted to pretend we had. I thought he was just numb to it all, a passenger in his own decline. I had no idea he was a silent, meticulous archivist of my cruelty. I became careless, emboldened by his silence. The complaints started spilling out of me, little toxic whispers in the quiet moments of our life. I didn't realize he was collecting them, each one a specimen of my decaying soul. One night, I was getting ready for bed, brushing my hair with angry, frantic strokes. He was already lying down, his eyes closed, his breathing shallow. I thought he was asleep. "Can't you just try?" I muttered to my reflection in the mirror, the words tasting like acid. "Can't you just try to look like you're not dying for one single evening?" I heard a faint rustle of the bedsheets behind me but dismissed it. Another time, I'd spent all afternoon making his favorite lasagna, a recipe that usually filled the house with warmth and comfort. He took 2 small, hesitant bites and then pushed the plate away, a sheen of nauseous sweat on his forehead. The frustration boiled over in me. "For God's sake, Lorenzo," I snapped, the sound of my fork clattering on my own plate unnaturally loud in the tense silence. "It's just food. How do you think it makes me feel when you do this? I have no appetite at all watching you." He never responded. He would just absorb the blows. I mistook his stillness for weakness. I had no idea it was the coiled stillness of a predator gathering evidence. The final performance, the one that brought the whole rotten stage down, was our anniversary. Our 10th. I insisted we go out to Oakhaven, the nicest restaurant in town, the one with the white tablecloths and the hushed, reverent atmosphere. I bought a new dress, a deep crimson silk that made me feel like the woman I used to be. I needed to feel that way, just for a night. He looked so frail in his suit, the fabric hanging off his diminished frame. Halfway through the appetizer, his face went pale. He mumbled a hasty apology, hand clamped over his mouth, and practically ran to the men's room. He was in there for 20 minutes. When he came back, defeated and humiliated, I didn't feel sympathy. I felt white-hot rage. All those eyes on me, the whispers. The night was ruined. My night. Back home, the silence in the car was thick with my fury. As soon as we walked through the door, I turned on him. "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" The accusation was insane, but I didn't care. "You couldn't stand to see me happy for one night. You had to ruin it. I wish," I said, my voice dropping to a venomous whisper, "I wish it was me who had it. At least I wouldn't be so pathetic. At least I wouldn't turn my own misfortune into everyone else's personal hell." He just looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked slowly up the stairs. The next morning, the house was unnaturally quiet. The silence wasn't the usual heavy, oppressive quiet of illness. It was an empty, hollow silence that seemed to echo. I woke up slowly, surfacing from a dreamless sleep, and the first thing I noticed was the cold. Lorenzo's side of the bed was empty and cool to the touch, the pillows perfectly plumped, as if no one had slept there at all. A flicker of annoyance, not yet alarm, went through me. Had he slept in the guest room again? I went downstairs, calling his name, the sound swallowed by the stillness. "Lorenzo!" I expected to find him in his armchair, reading, a cup of herbal tea steaming beside him. The chair was empty. The book he'd been reading lay closed on the side table. A quick check of the whole ground floor confirmed it. He was gone. A frantic energy seized me. I raced back upstairs to our bedroom, my heart starting a panicked drumming against my ribs. I threw open his closet door. My breath caught in my throat. It was half empty, a graveyard of wire hangers. His suits, his favorite sweaters, the worn corduroy jacket he loved, all gone. I ran into the bathroom. His toothbrush was missing from the holder. His razor, his shaving cream, the specific unscented soap he used, all vanished. The counter was stark and bare except for my own chaotic clutter of creams and cosmetics. He had moved with the quiet, devastating efficiency of a ghost. He had packed up his life while I slept. Then I saw it. On his nightstand, where his blue pill organizer used to be, sat a single, folded piece of notepaper, weighted down by his wedding ring. The gold band caught the morning light, a small, mocking circle of a promise I had shattered. My hands trembled so violently I could barely pick up the note. It wasn't a letter full of anguish or explanation. It was a short, brutally concise statement. It read, "I've sent your private thoughts to the one person whose opinion you truly fear. He deserves to know what his good and righteous daughter thinks when she's tending to her sick husband. I hope it was worth it." My mind went blank, a static hiss of pure panic. The one person. It took a moment for the gears to turn, for the cold dread to coalesce into a single, horrifying image. My father, sitting in his leather-bound study, his face a mask of judgment. Before I could even process the full implication, before I could even begin to formulate a lie or a defense, my phone rang. Its cheerful, chirping ringtone was a mocking counterpoint to the abyss opening up beneath me. The screen read, "Daddy," and that's when the 15-second call came, the one that was not a summons but a verdict. Lorenzo hadn't just left me. He had bypassed me entirely, refusing me the dignity of a final fight. He had gone straight for the foundations, taking a wrecking ball to the one pillar holding up my entire life. The drive to my father's rectory was a blur of self-recrimination and frantic, useless rehearsals of lies. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. When I arrived, he didn't greet me at the door. I was let in by the housekeeper, whose usually warm face was unreadable. She just nodded towards his study. The room smelled of old books and my father's quiet authority. He was sitting behind his large oak desk, not looking at me. In front of him, on the polished wood, was a small, sleek digital audio recorder I'd never seen before. My stomach plummeted. It wasn't just my words from our anniversary fight, it was so much worse. He didn't say a word, he just pressed a button, and I listened to myself. I heard my own voice, tinny and distorted, whispering cruelties into the darkness. "Can't you just try to look like you're not dying?" I heard the impatient, sharp clatter of my fork against a plate, followed by my snapped complaint about his lack of appetite. I heard every sigh of exasperation, every muttered curse under my breath when he moved too slowly. It was a supercut of my ugliest self, a highlight reel of my profound failure as a human being. The final recording was from our anniversary. My venomous, hateful words filled the sacred silence of my father's study. I wish it was me. At least I wouldn't be so pathetic. When it was over, he clicked it off. The silence that followed was heavier than any sermon. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to lie, but he held up a hand, a gesture that had silenced congregations for 30 years. "He's staying at the church's relief apartment," my father said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Beatrice from your book club, her husband is a lawyer. He's offered to represent Lorenzo, pro bono. The church will be supporting him." The mention of Beatrice was a physical blow. The system wasn't just collapsing. It was actively reconfiguring itself to support him and exclude me. "Daddy, please," I whispered, the words sounding foreign and childish. It was a mistake. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking. "You were thinking of yourself, Cassandra," he said, finally looking at me. And in his eyes, I saw something I had never seen before. Not anger, but a deep, bottomless chasm of disappointment. It was as if he was looking at a complete stranger. "That is all you were thinking of. I exist now in the hollowed-out shell of my former life. The house is a mausoleum, every room echoing with a silence that is louder than any argument we ever had. I tried cleaning, tried rearranging furniture, but his absence is a presence I can't scrub away. One afternoon, desperate for some connection, I decided to clear out his remaining things. A few old paperbacks, a box of university papers. Tucked inside a worn copy of a history book, I found a piece of paper. It wasn't a note for me. It was a list, written in his familiar, steady hand. The heading was post-remission. Below it, a short, hopeful list. Take Cassandra to see the sunrise in Tuscany. Replant the rose garden for her, the yellow ones she loves. Learn to dance the tango, properly. Finish my book. I sank to the floor, the list clutched in my hand, and a sound tore out of my throat that was half sob, half scream. The man I had accused of giving up was still making plans for us, still holding on to a future I had been actively sabotaging. My world has shrunk to the size of my phone's screen. My anger, once a roaring fire, has burned down to embers of confused, cyclical regret. I find myself composing long, rambling text messages to him at 3 a.m., my thumbs flying across the screen, pouring out apologies, excuses, and pleas. I never send them. What's the point? I am blocked. Instead, I hate myself, then I hate him for making me hate myself. I curse him for his cold, calculated revenge, for turning my own father against me. Then, 5 minutes later, I am drowning in a tidal wave of guilt, remembering the hopeful list in his book. The cycle is endless, a self-flagellation with no hope of absolution. I am no longer the pristine pastor's daughter. I am a ghost haunting the ruins of a life I single-handedly destroyed, a pathetic creature trapped in a quiet, self-made hell.